So that's my goal. And one of the strategies in here is the one that I want to do today, and it's very topical because it has to do with how to start the year. Ideas for starting the year in the best possible way to A, increase buy-in in the class, and B, reduce disciplinary issues. So in order to do that, I'm going to tell you a story. From when I was in 6th grade. This is the one thing I remember. Well, no, there's two things I remember from 6th grade. But my 6th grade teacher, whose name was Mrs. McLaughlin, I remember her name. I don't remember any names of any other teachers in 6th grade. The very first day of school, she was my English teacher, and she sat us all down, and instead of doing the things that we normally do on the first day of school, here's the rules, you sit in your assigned seat, and be respectful of people, property, and all that kind of stuff. She sat down on a desk in front of us, and she said, I just want to tell you something. I, as a teacher, do not go home at night and lock myself in a closet and think of horrible, terrible things to do to students. I thought, well, that's really weird. No teacher has ever said that to me before. Now, some of us actually do. But, if that... Essentially, she told me the truth. So you can tell the truth too and say, I go home and I lock myself in a closet and I think of horrible, terrible things to do. This was not...
I thought we all slept at school. We don't have that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that was part of it too. She's like, I want you to know that I go home and I have a life and I leave this job, and then I come back and we all get back together and we do this job. I go home, I go out to restaurants, I have friends. I'm a human being, essentially, is what she was telling me. I'm not a frustration machine, frustration creation machine. And no teacher had ever, it wasn't, this is not mind-blowing stuff, right? I mean, it wasn't like I was in 1st grade. I was in 6th grade. I should have figured this out by now. But no teacher had ever just talked to me like a human being and told me something about her life. And for some reason, that just stuck with me. And there was a day, I had to memorize the prepositions, right? I don't know if you still do this in 6th grade English or not. But you had to memorize all the prepositions. And I have a terrible memory. And what we had to do is we had to memorize it, and we had to stand up in front of the whole class, and we had to, from memory, recite them all in a list and get them all, right? But if you forgot one, she'd tell you how many you forgot, and you'd have an opportunity to figure out what it was. So I got up there, and I had studied this thing forever because my memory is just terrible for things like this, and I missed one. And she said, okay, now you missed one. And so I thought, and I got it. I pulled it up in my brain, and just before I could open my mouth, this girl who was sitting in the class, who I didn't get along with, she said it just before I did, which meant that I couldn't get credit for having come up with it, and I would have to do the whole thing over again. And I stood there, little 6th grade me, and I said, you bitch. And it just came out. I remember this vividly, but I remember the second thing that I did after I said that. The second thing that I did after I said that was I turned around and I looked at the teacher. Right? Because I loved that teacher. I wanted that teacher to like me, and I knew that I had just done something that she would not approve of. And my immediate instinct was not to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, girl, that I really don't get along with. My immediate reaction was to be like, oh, God, she's going to be mad. And, she was mad. We had a talk, but she was very, this is not the way that you behave, blah, 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 blah. But I understand why you did it. You just said, she made us talk, and we worked it out, and I felt immediately better. But that is the lesson, I think, that I maybe did not always do very well when I was a teacher on the first day of school, but I think would be the benefit is to build on the first day of school that connection as much as you can. Okay? I will read, I know some people know that I love this book called The Social Animal by David Brooks, and I'm just going to read one paragraph. This book is about sort of the social development that we go through from birth till death. And it's written, he creates these two fictional characters, and it's written in a way that, sort of allows you to go through their life and see how things go. But what he says is, the most important thing about any classroom is the relationship between a teacher and a student. Small classes may be better, but it's better to have a good teacher in a big class than a bad teacher in a small class. Students learn best from someone that they love. And I think what my interpretation of that word love is not just love as we think about it, but respect or a connection or caring. And if the student feels that way, feels that coming from you, then they are not going to want to disappoint you. They're not going to want to disappoint you academically. They're not going to want to disappoint you behaviorally. And if they do, they're going to look at you and they're going to have a like, oh, I didn't mean that kind of reaction. Okay? And the best chance that you're going to have to sort of develop, to start that connection is on the first day of school. And I know I did this when I was junior high, so I'm learning, right? I always said, post your classroom rules and show them the handbook and show them the binder and say, this is what your homework's going to be like. I'm going to go back on that. I wouldn't do that, right? We got 20 minutes on the first half day of school. Take that 20 minutes, take the next day of class, and figure out for you the thing that will really help them understand that you are a human being, that you want them to be in your class, that you want them to be successful, that you care about them. Make it fun, or make it meaningful, or make it entertaining, right? Everybody's got their shtick. Like, I'm trying to be entertaining. So I'll tell you the story about when I called a girl a bitch in the 6th grade. And I would tell them that story. That's probably what I would do. I would tell them, look guys, I've been in your shoes. I did this, right? Like, you and I'm just a slightly older, bigger version of you. We'll figure out how to make this work. But first day of school, that's my recommendation. It could be a game. For those of you who are worried about, there's that theory that you're supposed to start out strict and then loosen up over the year. I think we take that word strict the wrong way. I think we take it as mean, like I'm supposed to come across tough and mean and then I can lighten up over time. I think there is a way to say, I want to have good boundaries. I want you to understand the expectations in my class. That doesn't mean mean, right? I don't have to come down on you like a ton of bricks if you don't follow the expectation of my class just because I'm trying to be tough at the beginning of the year so that I can lighten up later. But having good, clear expectations and boundaries can be shown if you do a game, like a fun game that has some very clear rules, and you hold them to those rules on the first day of school or the second day of school. They get the idea that this class is fun, but I have to do it in the way that the teacher wants me to do it, or it's not going to be fun. So that's one way to do it. Obviously, like having a class discussion or sharing a story that's, present yourself as a human being. And kids can sniff out the BS, right? So if you're going to tell them the story that you think is inspirational or meaningful, about why you became a teacher, maybe, right? But it better be funny. It better be entertaining. It better connect with them. If it's like, I had a teacher when I was in the 7th grade and just really inspired me. And well, they're going to be like, whatever, I don't want to hear that. Why did that teacher inspire you? That's more interesting rather than that you were inspired by a teacher.